Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As president of the Minnesink Valley Historical Society, I extend a hearty and warm welcome to each of you here today as we celebrate and memorialize two specific events. The first occurred precisely 50 years ago today, when General Douglas MacArthur signed the surrender documents in Tokyo Harbor aboard the USS Missouri, thus ending the war with Japan and officially marking the end of World War II. The second event is here in Port Jervis, precisely 50 years ago today, when we complete some unfinished business as we memorialize and honor those 6 men from this West End area who sacrificed their lives for our country. A few months ago, in a conversation I was having with another West Ender, retired Naval Commander John Hawkins, he mentioned that the stone in our Rose Garden was given in memory of those men from West End who did not return from war. It was never dedicated. My immediate response was we should do something about that, and thus another historical society project was born. Peter Osborne, our executive director, who will make some remarks later on in the program, began what I call a Herculean project, doing research, collecting appropriate information and data from a myriad of sources, which included many interviews with families of the 6 men whom we are honoring today. The city of Port Jervis, through Councilwoman Kathleen Shortell, has made a substantial contribution to this endeavor, and thus we are all here today to celebrate the successful completion of our project. As we became more and more involved in the planning of this activity, a flood of memories came back to many of us. Terms like ration booklets, tokens and defense stamps, the small service flags hanging in the windows of many homes with gold and or navy blue stars, blackouts, the constant fear of the postmasters in rural areas or the postman here in the city of Port Jervis delivering a telegram, the V-mail letters, and the list goes on and on. In retrospect, the end of World War II seems so distant. Europe, for the most part, has been at peace for the last 50 years, and the Far East countries have now integrated themselves into our economy. At some future date, historians will be writing about ceremonies like the one today in somewhat of a vacuum. They will not relate to, even through photographs, the horrors of the atomic bomb, the telegrams, and more importantly, live the stress of war. This plaque honoring the 6 men from West End some 50 years later memorializes them and creates a sense of place, as some of these young men are not buried here in our peaceful valley. I am pleased to report we have successfully completed our unfinished business. I thank you. Would you all please rise for the presentation of the colors? By VF Post W-161, the Tri-State Naval Ship 7241, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Dismount, color. Dismount, color.
Be seated.
Parade dress.
Would you please give your attention to Joe Colombo, chaplain of VFW Post 161, who will offer the invocation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, I'm the chaplain of 161 VFW, and I'm here to say a few words. 50 years ago, I was in the Philippines, like many of my comrades, and it seems like yesterday, I was a young guy, and now I'm getting along. And I feel great, and I'd just like to make a couple of comments here. Thank you. We are assembled here to pay tribute to the men and women of our community who have served the United States Armed Forces, our neighbors who have fought in defense of this country and for the preservation of life. Those men and women are worthy of far greater recognition than mere words or markers. The sacrifice they made and the deeds they performed shall be written in history and shall remain alive in our memories for generations to come. We express sincerely our pride and gratitude for the tasks they fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm pleased to present the Mayor of Port Jervis, R. Michael Warden. Mayor.
Thank you, Charlie. It's a real honor and a privilege for me to be able to be here today to have a few words to mention to the audience. 50 years ago, this country was celebrating the end of the final end of a major conflict that everyone was involved in, a conflict that touched everyone's lives in many serious ways. Today, in essence, we are celebrating again. We are celebrating the memory of that 50 years ago, but more importantly, here in Port Jervis, we're celebrating the dedication and completion of a project that was started just after the end of the war, and that's to honor the 6 men from the west end of Port Jervis who made the supreme sacrifice so that we could all be here today standing in freedom. And I think it's befitting that this project has come to a close here in West End, and that this stone that we'll later unveil in the ceremony will rest beneath the flag that these men served and honored so well. With that, I'd also like to thank all of our other veterans who have served in the wars to help us to stand here as well and to remember the end of that conflict 50 years ago. In honor of today, I'd like to make a proclamation. It says, whereas in conjunction with the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the victory over Japan and the end of World War II, today we honor 6 men from West End who served in that war. And whereas Raymond F. Adams, Clifford J. Bartholomew, John D. Flannery, Richard D. Hawkins, John F. Newman, and John T. Opelt made the ultimate sacrifice while serving our nation. And whereas we recognize these local servicemen with great pride and acknowledge their unselfish dedication to the United States and to its people. And whereas in honor of these brave men, the City of Port Jervis and the Minisink Valley Historical Society dedicate this memorial today in honor of those individuals. Now therefore be it resolved that I, R. Michael Warden, as Mayor of the City of Port Jervis, do hereby declare Saturday, September 2nd, 1995, as a day of remembrance for the men of West Bend who sacrificed their lives in serving our great nation. Thank everyone for coming today.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'd like to present this to Charlie and the Minisink Valley Historical Society so that they can maintain this in our archives for futures to read.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. We're proud to have this. This will be very special to all of us. At this time, I'd like to present to you and introduce Kathleen Shortell, Councilwoman from the City of Port Jervis.
Thank you, Charles. Good afternoon, everybody. What I would like to do is to introduce all the family members for the 6 gentlemen who we are paying tribute to today. And if you could please stand when I call your name until after everybody's been read, I'd greatly appreciate it. First, I would like to introduce to you the family of Raymond F. Adams, Charles Adams' brother, Mr. and Mrs. Bob Dunn, cousins, Ed Adams' brother. The next family that I would like to introduce is the family of John D. Flannery, who, by the way, came in 2nd place for the most showing today. Yvonne Duryea, niece. Roger Duryea, nephew. Pat Flannery, niece. Michael Flannery, nephew. And Michael's also giving us the privilege of hearing his music today. John Fedorka, nephew. Kathy Chukrin, niece. Ed Chukrin, nephew. There's one person who I also would like to thank who is not here today, and that is David Flannery, who is John's brother, who aided us, who helped us in providing all of the information, and he is in Georgia and was unable to make the trip, but send a thank you to him also. The next family I would like to introduce to you is the family of John T. Opel, Thomas Opel, brother, Cheryl Opel, sister-in-law, Arthur Opel, brother, Elsie Opel, sister-in-law, Harry Opel, cousin, and all of the grandchildren, nieces, and nephews who are here today to represent this family. The next family I'd like to introduce you to is the family of Clifford J. Barthelmess, Olga Burgess, wife, Winifred Vicarello, sister-in-law, and Louis Vicarello, brother-in-law. The next family I would like to introduce you to is Richard D. Hawkins, John Hawkins, brother, Sally Hawkins, sister-in-law, Jean Hawkins Crine, sister, Leslie Crines, brother-in-law, Joanne McCafferty, niece, Candy Spangenberg, niece. The next family that I would like to introduce you to is the family of John V. Newman, Ruth Wells, sister, Barbara Parker, niece, and Catherine Knapp, niece. Thank you. I would just like to say a couple words. This day has held many mixed emotions for me, sad, happy, and proud. I'm sad and I grieve for all the families that lost a loved one. But at the same time, I'm happy and honored to pay tribute to these men in a dignified manner. But most of all, they have made me proud to be an American. I would like to thank all the family members who have opened their hearts and their memories to provide the information we needed to pay tribute to these men today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, very much. Okay. At this time, I'd like to present Peter Osborne, our executive director, who has a few words to say. And I would like to remind each of you that in your program, there is this wonderful piece called They Were Just Boys. And that's a part of that, and I want to make sure that you all have that. Peter?
I'd like to thank you all for coming today, and especially those of you who helped by providing us with information about the men that we are about to honor. I especially want to thank John Hawkins, who originally talked to me about this in 1991, and Les Crine, who was really instrumental in bringing all this project together. As I looked at the materials I had on these 6 West Enders, I realized that there were some general observations that can be made about them that are not only relevant to our city's legacy in the war efforts, but also to our nation at large. One of the things that has struck me during this project is that they were all so young. Just at the beginning of their lives, they were really just boys. They were all in their 20s when they were thrust into this horrible war. All through no fault of their own, became a part of the greatest military conflict of this century. Each gave the last full measure of sacrifice. 4 of the 6 were graduates of Port Jervis High School. Dick Hawkins was even a graduate of the New York State Ranger School. John Opelt was involved in the Civilian Conservation Corps, one of the most enduring legacies of the Great Depression era. Some were already pursuing careers. John Flannery, for example, was working at the New York Life Insurance Company in New York City, and Clifford Barthelmess was working at Gillender Brothers in Port Jervis just before being drafted. He was also a member of the Hose Company No. 5 that will be hosting our reception that follows the program today. As Charlie Adams said to me, most of the families of the West End and in Port Jervis, indeed, were suffering through the ravages of the Great Depression, just as our nation was. Jobs were hard to come by, and many of the neighborhood children had to quit school to get jobs to help to support their families. 4 of the men died in 1944, when some of the heaviest fighting of the war took place. 4 fought in the Atlantic Theater, and 2 served in the Pacific Theater. John Flannery had the distinction of having served in both. 1 was in the Army Air Corps, 1 served in the Marine Corps, 2 were infantrymen in the United States Army, 2 were in the United States Navy. 5 of the 6 received the Purple Heart Award as a result of their wounds suffered in combat. Each displayed a bravery that cannot be understood by today's television and video generation, but absolutely needs to be regularly remembered by them. Raymond Adams stood up while covering medics who were helping the wounded and was shot in the chest by a Japanese machine gunner. Clifford Barthma stepped on a landmine while taking part in the effort that would ultimately bring Germany to surrender within 7 months. John Flannery had taken over a machine gunner's position directly in front of a Japanese blockhouse and was killed by snipers as he was covering that blockhouse. Richard Hawkins was killed over the North Sea, where his bomber was shot down during a raid over Germany. John Opelt met his death when his ship, the USS Ingraham, collided with another ship while his ship was investigating yet another ship's problem. And a final name, John Newman. He was serving on the battleship USS Texas and was robbed and killed while on leave. And while he was not killed in action, he was there when his country called. I think that the most poignant story relating to these 6 men concerns the last moment of John Flannery's life. One of the last people he spoke to before he died was Frank Tanadishan, who was also from Port Jervis, New York. And it's thought that this encounter took place at Pearl Harbor. One can only wonder today at what the chances of something like that happening might have been. In the West End, the following telegram, or some variation of it, was read 6 times, and throughout the vicinity of Port Jervis, 50 times. As David Flannery wrote to me, it was a terrible, sterile telegram that devastated so many families throughout the course of World War II. It's addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Michael J. Flannery, 111 West Main Street in Port Jervis. Deeply regret to inform you that your son, Corporal John D. Flannery, USMCR, was killed in action in the performance of his duty and service of his country. No information available at present regarding disposition of remains. Temporary burial and locality where death occurred probable. You will promptly be furnished with any information received. To prevent possible aid to our enemies, do not divulge the name of his ship or station. Please accept my heartfelt sympathy. A letter will follow. A.A. Vandergrift, Lieutenant General, USMC Commandant. So today, we finish some unfinished business. Something that should have been done long ago when the war was over. However, most people were weary of the war, and many of the men who came home and women who came home were deeply burdened by what they saw and simply wanted to move on with their lives. Port Jervis in America was different then. We thought of our soldiers and sailors and Marines as heroes. We knew that there was a strong possibility, given the horror of the war, the regular delivery of the Western Union telegrams, that our loved ones might perish. And so during the war, there was a neighborhood sign right here where we are today that listed the servicemen who were overseas at the time and included gold stars next to the names of those men who had lost their lives. Sadly enough, as the years passed, the signs fell into disrepair and were dismantled. When we rehabilitated this park several years ago, we found those footers for that billboard still here and still in place. David Flannery wrote about his recollections of this to me, and he said, "I remember the original neighborhood memorial board with its sad but patriotic listing. Only pleasure and gratefulness greets the resurrection of this neighborhood memorial in a more permanent fashion. I thank you and congratulate you on your fine efforts. West End, more affectionately Germantown or God's country, will be served in honoring those who served them to the last ounce of their strength and love." In closing, Noted Civil War historian Bruce Catton wrote the following passage about the war between the states. I think it's equally appropriate for today's ceremony. He wrote, "There is the simple memory of personal valor, the enduring realization that when the great challenge comes, the most ordinary people can show that they value something more than they value their own lives. When the last of the veterans had gone, and the sorrow and bitterness which the war created had at last worn away, the memory of personal valor remained. The men who fought in the war, speaking for all Americans, had said something that the country could never forget." Thank you.
We're going to unveil the plaque right now, and Mike McCarthy, the Alderman at Large, and I will do that. Unfortunately, the microphone will not reach over that far. We dedicate this plaque to the people of Fort Jervis and in the memory of all those whose name is inscribed on the brass plate. There are medals of honor there and appropriate medals from the war and a flag, and I hope afterwards that you'll all stop and take a look at it. Yeah, may I present Mike McCarthy, Alderman at Large.
Thank you, Charles. I asked to speak just for a minute. It's an honor that on the 50th anniversary of VJ Day that we gather here with such a group of people to honor the names of Adams, Bartholomew, Flannery, Hawkins, Newman, and Opel. And it is a great honor, and though it is a sad occasion in one section, it is also a proud, proud moment. I don't think any of us realize without these people making a supreme sacrifice as they did, and each and every one on the back page of your program making that supreme sacrifice, that we would be able to gather here today, even though it's 50 years later, to honor them. I ask and I challenge each and every one of you, every time you pass this Memorial Rose Garden, to think of these men who made the supreme sacrifice, but I also challenge you to thank each and every person, male or female, that has served their country in wartime and in peace. Because without that, even today, we are being challenged for our basic freedoms. And these people have given that supreme sacrifice that we enjoy so much. So I ask you each time that you come by here, just say thank you for what you did for me. And if you know someone in the service who has been in the service, please, when you meet them, just say thank you. We appreciate what you did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. At this time, I am pleased to present Michael Flannery of the Old Brigade Pipes and Drums. Michael is here today, and he's a nephew of John Flannery, one of the men we are memorializing. His first election is going to be Minstrel Boy, and that's an old song about a young man who goes off to war and does not return. Michael, where are you? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael. As Michael plays the next hymn, Amazing Grace, Councilwoman Kathy Shortell will read the names of those men and women from the Port Jervis area who lost their lives during World War II. These names appear on the monument at Veterans Park in Orange Square.
Albert Adams, Raymond F. Adams, James C. Allward, Emerson T. Orton, Donald A. Barnes, Clifford J. Barthelmess, Donald R. Bauer, Donald Burns, Bernard Bedell, Kenneth Boyd, Raymond Briard, Stanley E. Brzezowski, George E. Chandler, Bertram F. Crawford, Gilbert C. DeGraw, Devere Denton, Dimitri Dudko, David X. Andrew Fehrenbach, Jr., John D. Flannery, Albert F. Fleming, Morris J. Franz Bloch, Richard Daniel Hawkins, Manly S. Hewson, Robert C. Inella, Jr., Earl E. Irwin, Malcolm Johnson, Nevin Johnson, Albert Jones, Walter E. Cadell, Jr., Herbert M. Kinney, Harrison E. Martine, Lester McDowell, Fred S. McGaugh, Donald Middleton, Matthew Miglianico, John Victor Newman, Harold J. Norman, John T. Opel, Wilmore Pavlik, Helen Rogers, Robert T. Ross, William Sherwood, Howard Target, Clifford H. Tribble, Frederick T. Tuthill, Richard M. West, Albert H. White, Jr., Edward R. Williamson, and Harry C. Young.
And we should also add the names of Donald Burns and David Ecke. Thank you, Kathy. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce to you Councilman from the City of Port Jervis, Chubb Prisco.
"50 years ago, I was in the Philippines, and I'm awful glad to be here today. I'd like to read you an excerpt from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address that I think is very appropriate for this time. That from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. November 19th, 1863, and thank you."
Thank you, Chubb. Would you please give your attention to Joe Colombo, the chaplain of VFW Post 161, who will offer the benediction.
Let us bow our heads. Father of us all, in the depth of our silent reverence, we realize the truth of the inspired words. I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. As comrade after comrade departs, we march on with our ranks grown thinner. Help us to be faithful unto thee and to one another. Look in mercy on the widows and children of our departed comrades, we beseech thee. And with thine own tenderness, console and comfort those who are bereaved. Heavenly Father, bless our country with freedom, peace, and righteousness. Through thy favor, may we meet at last before thy throne in heaven. We praise thy great name forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you very much. This concludes our program for the afternoon. We extend our deep appreciation to the officials of the City of Port Jervis for their splendid cooperation in making this project possible. To the service veterans organizations who helped us with the colors, and Michael Flannery, thank you very much for your touching bagpipe music. Also want to thank the Port Jervis Fire Department, hose number 5, who have agreed to host a reception for us after this program. And I think before we break up, I think a lot of you might like to come up and take a look at the plaque. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.
Came to get you to take you to the fire. As long as you're good. Very, very glad everybody enjoyed it.
Thank you.